After a very long wait, Arsenal have returned to football and returned to winning ways. Last night was a 2-1 victory over Fulham, capped off with a Bukayo Saka winner. Been a very, very long time since we've been able to say that, but as always with this season, injury concerns have marred the joy. Let's get started. Yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. Wherever you are, I hope you are well. I hope you have enjoyed yesterday's victory. It was a long old wait and it would have been rubbish to come back with anything less than a win after such a long time off over the international break and then the FA Cup weekend that we weren't involved in, but we got our victory. Thanks to familiar faces, Mikel Merino becoming a real regular goal scorer and Bukayo Saka back scoring goals for the Arsenal. It wasn't a perfect evening. We have lost 2 players to injury. Just as we got a couple back, we lose them again. It's a 1 in 1 out system apparently at Arsenal, which is a bit brutal, and certainly 1 in 1 out for hamstrings. We will come on to all of that, but I want to start today talking about Gabriel Martinelli, and I'm going to do the first half through his eyes, his lens, and then kind of talk a little bit about the goal and how we changed up in the second half, because I thought whatever Mikel Arteta said at halftime, it really worked. It really worked. It was a much better attacking performance in the second half. Obviously, towards the end, we got a little sloppy, but I was pleased with how we were able to change it up and do things better, do things differently. So, yeah, let's do that. Let's get right into it and start with the first half through Gabriel Martinelli's eyes. And the reason I say through Gabriel Martinelli's eyes is because for a long time in the first half, I really thought he was the only threat. He was the only threat in an Arsenal shirt, at least. There were a couple of Fulham counter-attacks, and my first thought about Fulham really was this is a very well coached team. You know, I said that on the preview pod. I thought they were playing above the sum of their parts thanks to Marco Silva and his influence, and I thought watching them I was like, yeah, you know, they know what they're doing here. They're not quite as deep as some of the other low blocks we've faced. Actually, some of the other low blocks we've faced have not really thought it through, in my opinion. They've just sort of been like, we'll just get men behind the ball and hope, whereas I thought Fulham's looked really, really organised, and you could tell with the speed that they were able to launch a counter-attack on. You know, they were in the right spots, ready to go. Their rest defence was, our rest defence was not able to contain the team quite as well as we have with other teams, and they were getting breaks, which was, positive for them, obviously encouraging for them, but not great for us, and that might be something that I think Mikel Arteta will look at, is how well organised they were, and how can we deal with teams like that going forward, because these teams will become more and more commonplace in the Premier League. You see the likes of Fulham, you see the likes of Bournemouth. You know, these really quality coaches like Marco Silva and Andoni Iraola are going to teams like this because they're starting to get money. They've got that accumulation of being in the Premier League for a long time. They're going to these clubs that typically, you know, in the past they might have waited for a big 6 job to come out. But now they're more than happy to go to these teams and really raise their level. And I think Marco Silva deserves huge credit for what he's doing at Fulham. I do hope they get some European football, because I think it's a club that deserves it. And you know, they do things in the right way over at Fulham, which I appreciate. And obviously the ex-Arsenal connection is there. Anyway, waffle. Gabriel Martinelli. Yeah, in the 5th minute, I wrote my first note of the game, which was Martinelli burst past Castagna, opportunity ? And he really did have him on toast. He really did have him on toast the whole game. I was very impressed with Martinelli. And look, I've been critical of him on this show many, many times. I've thought, you know, actually you've got to do a lot more. You've got to do a lot more with the talent that he has and the kind of, I guess, ability that he has. You've got to be a lot more threatening, and he's felt like he's really lost a lot of confidence. And I've said many times, one performance isn't going to change my opinion on this, but I've said many times that I think he is the opportunity to upgrade in this team. And actually buying a superstar left winger would probably be my preference over a superstar striker, and then buy a striker that can rotate in with Havertz. That's how you kind of complete that forward line, in my eyes at least. But Gabriel Martinelli last night was very, very good. He had the most touches in the opposition box of any player by a country mile as well, by the way. 12. The nearest was 5. Martin Odegaard and Declan Rice sharing that. So he was a real threat, dangerous down that left side. Obviously got his assist later in the game, but ultimately he created our first really good chance of the game, I thought, where his cross reached Nwaneri, and Nwaneri, fair play to him, he got a decent connection on it. Always difficult though, those ones. Declan Rice had one similar in the second half. It's a very high volley, very difficult technique, and I thought Nwaneri did well to strike it down. First of all, if you you either get that perfect and you strike it straight in the top bins, but the percentage players kind of strike it down at the goalkeeper, knowing that, the bounce might catch them off guard, knowing that they've got to get low if it's close to them. So it was a really good volley, just a bit straight at Leno, to be honest. But, that was our first really, really big chance, and I felt like Martinelli was a threat down that left-hand side for the whole of that first half, and really our only threat. It was a little bit reminiscent of previous games. I mean, by the 14th minute, we'll talk about this in a bit more detail later, but by the 14th minute, we'd had a big old hamstring injury to one of our key players, and we were facing a low block, and we were unable to get round them, and there was a sense of frustration. I couldn't quite hear everything the crowd was kind of coming through with, but you could see on the pitch, there was some frustration of Odegaard and Arteta at times, when runs weren't made, passes weren't made in time, and there was not much threat. And I think the first point where we really got it right, we scored. Before that had gone through Martinelli, and it was his brilliance, but as a collective, with the first point we got it right, we got our goal, and it's that man, Mikel Merino, again. It's incredible. Since he moved up front, he has 5 Premier League goals, 6 in all competitions. It's a really good return. A really good return. At one point in this game, it looked like he was going to get his 3rd winner for us since he moved up front, which is, again, very impressive. He scored 2 against Leicester, 1 against Chelsea. He's got 1 here against Fulham. He's obviously scored previously in the Champions League against PSV. He's been a reliable source of goals since he moved up front. And I posted on Blue Sky that he's not a kind of pretty striker, is he? He's not. I think Kai Havertz has that kind of drifty kind of presence where he's almost, I'm not saying he's as good, but he's almost Berbatov-esque, the way he kind of drifts around when we are on the ball and makes runs round people and finds clever pockets of space. Merino is much more batter the door down sort of thing. He strikes the ball very well. He gets high quality shots, and he just turns up at the right place at the right time. That's exactly what he did for this goal, and I think it's a really good move. And again, like I say, it's the first time we really got it right. So Thomas Partey picks up the ball in central midfield, and where before we'd been doing our classic kind of U-shape passes, sideways passes, he decides to put a through ball in just inside one of the channels, inside one of the Fulham players, for Gabriel and Timber to run onto. Gabriel and Timber is then, his only option is to drive forward. He's running onto that ball. He's driving forward. Fulham are turned around, or at least their midfield are. And Timber slips a fantastic pass through to Ethan Nwaneri. Ethan Nwaneri cuts it back to Mikel Merino. A decent strike after a good touch. Gets a deflection, goes in. We're definitely due a couple of those goals this year. So I'm happy that happened. Merino, again, getting a goal. I want to just chat about Nwaneri a little bit because I think he'll be forgotten. He'll be forgotten in this game. Because Martinelli was so good. Martinelli was my man of the match, and I think he might have been the Premier League man of the match as well. Because Saka comes back after 100 days out and scores a goal. But Ethan Nwaneri continues to add to his season stats, and he gets an assist now for this goal. It's a really good cross. It's a really good assist. And, I feel really good for the guy. I mean, what a season he's having. What a season. It's been, can you say, like a revolution for him? I'm not sure you can, because that would suggest that he he had something to revolutionise. It's just an incredible welcome to the Premier League. He has 8 goals in his senior career now at Arsenal, 3 goals and 2 assists in the Premier League this season from 665 minutes. Really quite incredible. So pleased for the kid. Yes, he's a bit hot and cold, but he's 18. Of course he's going to be hot and cold. To get another assist in this game, I thought was really, really good. So I just wanted to give him his flowers there. I'm just trying to find his full season stats. So it's 8 goals and 1 assist, apparently. That feels low on his assist numbers. I think it's slightly higher than that. But yeah, I mean, it was a kind of modest first half, I would say. That would be how I describe it. For me, Thomas Partey was probably one of the better players outside of Gabriel Martinelli. He made 3 or 4 really good tackles, a couple of good recovery tackles, and obviously was involved in the goal. So, yeah, decent performance from him, a very good performance from Gabriel Martinelli, but a tepid kind of first half. And I think it was clear from very early on in the second half, very early on, that whatever Mikel Arteta had said at halftime was really, really working. Again, I kicked off my second half notes writing about Martinelli. Martinelli running riot down the left, cross and skied by Ødegaard. I mean, I thought that was a really, really good chance, to be honest. It was a really good chance, and maybe 2 seasons ago we see Ødegaard nestle that in the top bins, but he just doesn't have it right now. I did my podcast in the international break where I was like, is there hope? Is he back to his best? I don't think it looks like that after yesterday's performance. He wasn't necessarily bad, but he can do so much more. And I think that chance was one of those ones where you just look at a player who has got no confidence, is not sure where the ball's going when he kicks it. And it was not a great night for him. It was a wild couple of minutes after that because Ødegaard skied it, and then Raya was called to make a major, major save, and then Leno was called to make a major save. That was about 3 minutes, from 50th minute to the 53rd minute. Timber with a really good chance. I mean, that was Ødegaard's best moment, putting Timber through for the chance where he was one-on-one with Leno and winded Leno. We had a couple more chances. There was a Saliba header from a free kick, and then a string of corners where Martinelli and Marino had chances. And at this point I wrote, we've got a much, much improved second half so far. Having in the first half written about 1-2 chances, including the goal, I'm already writing about 3 or 4 in the first 15 minutes. And of course, I would have written that note at about just before Saka came on. Saka does come on, and then he picks up his goal 6 minutes later. I mean, what a return. The atmosphere and the energy seemed to lift in the second half, but then there was another second wind as Saka came on, and you could hear the relief around the stadium, couldn't you? You could hear everyone just suddenly feel a lot better about how the game was going to go, about the rest of our season, about watching the rest of our season. It's really important to note that actually, whilst these players look really determined, really up for it, and Mikel Arteta has done a superb job of keeping these players engaged, the fans need to remain engaged, and I think that could get quite tough if we don't have an exciting brand of football to play for the rest of the season. Because let's be honest, there is nothing to play for in the Premier League. Liverpool are not going to produce the collapse that we need. It would be a gargantuan collapse at this point. That's not going to happen. So we need to make sure we start playing some more exciting attacking football to really keep the crowd engaged. And Bukayo Saka is central to that, as is Gabriel Martinelli. And they were both involved in this goal. I'm just watching it back. It's actually outrageous from Martinelli. Obviously, it's a really simple finish for Bukayo Saka. We've needed that threat at the back post, and he's done really well to be where he is and stay calm and finish and all of that sort of stuff. But you've just got to give it to Gabriel Martinelli at this point. I mean, Rice picks the ball up in midfield and gives it to Martinelli, and he showed what he's shown all game, really. All game at this point is just this ability to drive with the ball. We know he's got that. We just haven't seen enough of it, and he picks the ball up a little bit deeper, to be fair to him, for this goal. He picks the ball up deeper, and that gives him some space. He drives away, I think it's Pereira and maybe Castagna or Lukic, and slots the ball to Mikel Merino. Mikel Merino, pulling out wide when Gabriel Martinelli's more central. Love to see that rotation. I mentioned before, he's not quite Kai Havertz in the way he moves and all of that sort of stuff, but he is getting better. He is understanding it more. So fair play to Mikel Merino. It's a decent cross. He does well to get something on it, but the flick from Martinelli, I mean, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I wonder if there's a time where maybe he is feeling a little bit more desperate to feel like he's contributing, and he tries to take that down and steer a kind of weird left-footed shot at the goal, and it just trickles wide. But he knows he just needs to help this on. He knows that Saka and Odegaard are behind him. He helps it on, and it is a really, really simple header for Saka. The touch is outrageous. It is a fantastic flick from Martinelli. He's facing away from the goal at the point that he flicks it, and just uses the outside of his boot, slashes his heel to help it on, and Saka has a very simple job from there. Obviously, Saka then went over to the fitness coaches to thank them around, I guess around his kind of recovery and his return. A really nice touch. Just shows how nice that guy is. We did have a goal correctly ruled out for offside, but again, it involved Gabriel Martinelli. A really good run and finish for him, and actually a decent pass from Odegaard as well. And then, of course, Fulham get their kind of 15 minutes in the sun. We really got quite sloppy towards the end. I think, Timber coming off did not help. We had a back four at the end of Partey, Saliba, Kivior and Miles Lewis-Skelly. Now, that is... Look, they're all good players. But it's not the back four I would pick. I think you only really want one of those players outside of Saliba in your back four, because, you can cope with a Partey at right back, but to have Partey at right back and an 18-year-old at left back and the third, fourth choice centre back in at centre back, to have let's say Kivior and not have Calafiori on the left of him protecting him, and not have Timber on the right in the right back slot, allowing Saliba just to shift over a little bit. It's all a little bit difficult, and I think we saw some of the positional sense not be quite right after Timber went off. There was obviously a moment where Muniz should have scored. They had a chance. They worked it down the left past Thomas Partey, and it was really a bad miss. But again, we kind of got caught too high and didn't have the recovery capacity. And then same for their goal. Miles Lewis-Skelly caught too high. We just didn't have the capacity to recover like we do with Gabriel and Timber on the pitch. And that resulted in a goal. It's a bit unlucky for David Raya, I think. A bit unlucky indeed. But mainly because it gets like a double deflection off Saliba, doesn't it? But overall, look, it's one of those games where we can't have scintillating performances every single week, and especially when you still have a lot of injury trouble. So we couldn't start Bukayo Saka in this game. We're missing Kai Havertz. Gabriel goes off. Timber goes off. We've lost Calafiori in the international break. The injury break, Jesus. It shows you where we're at, right? So, all of this is still going on. We've had 16 days off. It's going to be a little bit flat to start with. I was very, very pleased with one that we weren't playing well in the first half and we managed to get a goal. And then two, we really leveled it up in the second half after whatever Mikel Arteta said. And we had Martinelli on fire, Saka coming back, playing well, getting a goal. Yes, it got sloppy towards the end. But really, that for me, we'd done our job by then. And actually, my major complaint for this season, if there is any, is when we've conceded these sloppy goals, we haven't done enough to make them inconsequential. This one will be inconsequential. We will forget about it tomorrow. So, I'm pleased with last night's performance. I'd give it kind of an overall sort of 7 out of 10 for Arsenal. Job done. Move on to the next one, and we've got some sharpness back, which is a good thing. I'm going to take a short break. When I come back, I'm going to talk about the injuries I've kind of vaguely touched on, and then I'm also going to do my stars and underpars. Hello everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're like me, you finished watching an Arsenal game and you're already looking for the next bit of Arsenal coverage you can find. If that sounds like you, follow or subscribe to Arsenal Unfiltered on your podcast app of choice right now to make sure you don't miss a single episode from me. I'm here 3 times a week, reviewing matches and covering Arsenal news and I'm so excited to have you all here as well. Thank you very much. Welcome back to Arsenal Unfiltered. This is a match review podcast of Arsenal 2, Fulham 1. You had a breakdown of the goals in the first half, a breakdown of the game in general, but two key things that I kind of very roughly touched upon in the first half that I want to go into a bit more detail here now are the two injuries to our defensive superstars. First one, Gabriel, 14th minute. I mean, this one's a disaster. I think we've got a bit more hope for the Timber one. Maybe that's wishful thinking, but I do think we've got a little bit more hope there. The Gabriel one is an absolute disaster. I said it at the start. It's a 1-in, 1-out policy on hamstrings at Arsenal this season. And as we get Bukayo Saka back and we go, wow, that is so close to our starting 11. Minus Kai Havertz or Gabriel Jesus, that is what we would be looking at. And actually, with Mikel Merino functioning so well up front, maybe not perfectly, but efficiently and getting goals, I was really kind of looking forward to that Real Madrid tie and saying, testing ourselves against probably the best team in the world, in my opinion. I was so excited for that and just seeing what this team would be like. Same with when we played Bayern last year. It felt like a real moment of, okay, we can have a look at ourselves here. We can really get a test on and see how this team manages in a 180-minute tie. And 14 minutes in, we lose Gabriel, and he is literally running back. There's no one touching him. There's no collision. It just goes. It takes ages for the game to stop. But to be fair, I agree with what happened. Arsenal carried on whilst they were in possession of the ball. So when Fulham regained possession, they were they had no responsibility to put it out. And the referee had no responsibility to stop the game. Now, ironically, in the second half, a Fulham player went down injured. We had the ball and the referee stopped the game. I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? The lack of consistency, because he got it right. Let's get this right. He got it right with the Gabriel one. It really annoys me when refs stop game for non-head injuries. But then as soon as Fulham had a situation, he stopped the game. And it's simple laws like that we can't apply consistently. But I won't get on to the ref today. We don't want to do that again. There's a bit of me, and I was discussing with my fiance yesterday, is this a pattern? What are they doing behind the scenes? This is now Martinelli, Saka, Havertz, Gabriel, all hamstring injuries. Hamstring injuries are really common in football. It's a sprinting sport, so it's going to be one of the primary injuries, along with kind of ankle rolls and swollen ankles, ligament damage in your ankle. It's going to be a very common injury, but at Arsenal it seemed a little bit too common this year, and so many of them have been innocuous. We think of Saka's, he was just crossing the ball against Crystal Palace, and that's when he did it. We think of this one with Gabriel, he's just running. He's sprinted full out. He's a big guy, but not ideal. So, look, we can sit and pray, but if I was, a listener to this podcast, what I'd want to hear a really encouraging message that actually he'll be okay for the Real Madrid tie, but I can't see it. I can't see it. At best, one of those hamstring injuries, it's 3-4 weeks at the very best. If it's more severe, which it probably looks like it is, I think it's his season over. I really do. To go down the way he did with no one around him is a real worry. The other injury was to Gabriel and Timber. Now, Timber went down in the first half after being kicked by Raul Jimenez on the knee. Nasty kick, can hurt. Studs on the kneecap, especially when it gets on the inside of the kneecap, can really hurt. But once the physio had been on, he looked okay. He looked fine. He was running about fine. And then in the second half, around the 75th, 76th minute, he went down again and was looking at the knee again. I have more hope for this one because I wonder if this was a scenario where actually he took a knock, he took a kick, very painful situation. He kind of got up, grinned, bared it, and then just as the game carried on and he was required to do a lot more running, it didn't kind of wear off and he was feeling discomfort. I'm still worried about this one because Gabriel and Timber, we need him, I think, more than any of the defenders at the moment when we've got to face Vinny Jr. and Kylian Mbappe. I mean, the real kick in the teeth for this is Ben White wasn't even on the bench. So Ben White was not available because he has, I think Mikel Arteta in his pre-match said he'd been hurt in some way, nondescript. We don't know if that's a setback of the injury or if it is a new injury. I don't know, but Gabriel and Timber getting this injury on the same week that we lose Ben White, I mean, it's brutal. And let's just do this exercise again. What's the back four that we could make up out of the players that have just been injured this week? Ricardo Calafiori at left back, Gabriel at centre back. We'll go Ben White at right centre back and Gabriel and Timber at right back. That is a starting back four for 95% of the teams in the Premier League, maybe even 95% of the teams in the Champions League. And we lose them all within a week. Calafiori on international duty, White in training, Gabriel and Timber in this game. Look, I'm going to cross my fingers for Timber. I think there is a good chance that he's just picked up something innocuous and small from that contact with Raul Jimenez and he just couldn't play through it anymore. I think there is a good chance of that. It didn't look like anything where he's collapsed his knee or anything's gone or anything like that. I have no kind of hope for Gabriel. I think his season's probably done. And, I don't want to be the diagnosis guy, but you can look at patterns, right? How often do we see people running along, no one near them, pull up with something, and then they're back in a week's time? Very, very rarely. So I have hope for Timber, but I think at best case scenario, very best case scenario in the first leg against Real Madrid, we are lining up with a back four of Timber, Saliba, Kivior, and Marcelo Skelly. If even one of those guys is back, White or Calafiori, that makes a huge difference because you could play, let's say, you could go Timber, White, Saliba, MLS. You could go Timber, Saliba, Calafiori, MLS. Even one of those guys really upgrades us, and that's not to be disrespectful to Kivior. I don't like a world where we're playing against Kylian Mbappe with Jakub Kivior in the team. But, that's a problem for another day. The other thing I wanted to cover before I leave you is stars and under pars. Now, I've kind of mentioned my stars a little bit, so I won't spend too much time on them. Gabriel Martinelli is my man of the match. A superb performance. And I'm going to chuck Mikel Merino into the star pot as well. He had a good game. He was involved in both goals. I think he is one of those players who he's never going to catch the eye, just like Martinelli caught the eye last night. He's exciting to watch. He travels at pace. He does skills. I think he flip-flapped Castagna at one point. He is the archetypal Brazilian futsaler, because that's where he came from, futsal. So, he is the archetypal player like that. Mikel Merino, far more functional. And if he doesn't score or isn't involved in goals, you probably look at him and you go, not sure about that guy. But actually, I think let's remember, he is the second choice left 8 playing as the starting 9. That's a huge switch. And what he's doing, game in, game out, I think, just to add anything, add something up front, add something for the team, be someone we can post up on and work from there, I think is so impressive. And to get a goal in this game as well, really, really good. My under pars, I have gone for Declan Rice and Martin Odegaard. Controversial, maybe. I don't know. I've really been impressed by Rice over recent weeks, and I really thought after the international break and the assist against Chelsea, Martin Odegaard was on something. But I felt like this game sort of passed both of those players by. Rice had some nice tackles. He had an extremely silly moment that annoyed me where Diop just butchered him off the ball, basically, pushed him off of it. He was out-muscled. Maybe it's a free kick, but I don't think it was. But his annoyance that he didn't get a free kick, he just chased Diop back, pulled his shirt 4 or 5 times, and John Brooks rightfully booked him. It was silly and petulant, and that annoyed me because Declan Rice he's one of our senior players. He is going to be probably the next England captain, and it was just a silly moment, not a good example for the likes of MLS and Ethan Nwaneri, and that's not all on him. Everyone's going to have moments where they lose their head a little bit, and I'm not gonna butcher him or put him in my under par list just for that. But I did feel the game passed him by. He didn't really get on the ball too much and influence too much. And very similar for Martin Odegaard. I thought he had that one great pass to Gabriel and Timber. He had another moment where he passed to Martinelli, but Martinelli was offside. Apart from that, do I think he was bad? No. Gave the ball away a couple of times, but everyone does, especially in that position. I didn't think he was bad, but I just thought he wasn't really involved in the game too much. And yes, you're going to have games like that, and that's why you have a raft of talent. That's why you have Gabriel Martinelli's and Bukayo Saka's, so that when your Martin Odegaards aren't doing the business, you can do things in other places. But I just feel there's been too many of these from Odegaard this year, and I was so excited having seen 5 assists in 3 games across the international break and the Chelsea game, but it didn't happen yesterday evening. Let's hope, right? Because when I put people in underpars, I mean underpars for that game. Declan Rice has been brilliant recently, and I still really, really believe in Martin Odegaard as a player. I think he will come back next year and be in a far better position, hopefully with a summer off, doing his fitness work, getting back to that kind of pop that he needs to have with off both feet. I'm excited for that, but just for last night, for both of them, I don't think that they had the influence that I know they can have, and that's the issue. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Like I say, a professional win. Saka's back. Great news. Martinelli back looking really, really impressive. Cross our fingers for Timber. I wouldn't get your hopes up for Gabriel. And let's see how we do against Everton. Let's see if Bukayo Saka starts against Everton. That'll be really my big question, I think. I will be previewing that game maybe tomorrow night or Friday night. Let's see. And then obviously on Sunday, probably bring you the podcast to review that match. So all very, very exciting stuff. So hopefully that'll be 4 podcasts this week to make up for the fact that we only had 2 last week. Like I said in the middle, if you've enjoyed this episode or you enjoy any episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, please go to your podcast app, find Arsenal Unfiltered and hit follow. It really, really helps me out. Help you out as well, because you'll get, straight into your feed. You'll get every time I release a podcast. So you'll be able to keep up to date with all the Arsenal news, all the Arsenal match reviews that I'm doing. But also, if you're feeling really, really generous and you really want to help me out, go wherever you get your podcast from. Go and leave me a 5-star review. That massively helps improve the reach of Arsenal Unfiltered and allows more people to hear some of this, commentary and content that I'm bringing out for you guys. Otherwise, all that's left to say is thank you for following, thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you very, very soon.